In 1998, Toyota stripped its J90/95 SUV of the title of Land Cruiser, leaving only the Prado short name. What this word means, no one knows so far. They say that in some dialects of Spanish this is the name of the picnic clearing. One way or another, this mid-size SUV built on the 4Runner platform quickly gained fame as a reliable and hardy car and emerged from the shadow of the big and famous Land Cruiser, becoming a completely independent figure on the battlefield for the minds, hearts, and wallets of buyers. Yes, he quickly rusted, was not the most dynamic, but for the reliability and versatility he was forgiven for everything. The second generation with the J120 index appeared in 2002 and, in terms of mechanics, was very similar to its predecessor. And in 2009, right on schedule, our hero, the Toyota Prado J150, was presented in Frankfurt. It, like the very first one of the J95 series, was built on the 4Runner platform, but differed from the donor in its configuration, powertrains, and was, as they say, a little more sophisticated. Because for all its splendor, the old 4Runner, according to Toyota marketers, remained dressed up in a fashionable jacket as a redneck, a close relative and friend of the Hilux farm pickup truck, and even a representative of the beautiful half of humanity could well have bought the Prado. The appearance of the J150 in Frankfurt indicated that the model was primarily intended for the old world market, because in North America they showed the Lexus GX460 with the 4.6 V8 engine instead. Starting with the J150 series, Toyota Prado changed its name again in the European and Russian markets, returning the old nameplate, Land Cruiser Prado. By this time, the older model was already called the Land Cruiser 200, which successfully separated the brothers on different sides of the segment. Considering that at one time the three-door versions of the J90 and J120 sold well, especially in the simplest trim levels, it was decided to leave the short base version on the conveyor. As a result, as of 2010, our hero remained perhaps the only left-hand drive middle-class SUV with a three-door body and a short base. It was supposed to be ideal as a tugboat for, say, a trailer, boat or trailer, although it is clear that the five-door version was far ahead of the three-door in terms of sales. In terms of dimensions, the J150 only slightly exceeded its predecessor, being, in fact, a deep modernization of the J120. The frame was strengthened for twisting, the configuration of some body panels was changed, etc. On the market you can find 5- and 7-seater versions. The body of the current Land Cruiser Prado is well resistant to corrosion, which was no different from the J90/95. Even the paintwork, a real scourge of the Japanese at the beginning of the 21st century, is quite resistant to mechanical damage, and it is extremely difficult to find bugs in the places of chips. It is clear that no one has canceled poor quality body repairs, so careful selection is still the most important factor. Despite the very strong frame, it does not hurt to check its geometry, even at the camber adjustment stand. This will save you from buying a car restored after a severe accident. The Prado of the first years had another funny, albeit unpleasant, feature. The right front fender rattled on the go. It was treated in 5 minutes by simply bending the brackets. Cars with characteristic cracks on the windshield are rare, which generally indicates sufficient rigidity of the frame body structure. In 2013, a light restyling was carried out, which resulted in updating the front end and rear lights. For the Land Cruiser Prado J150, the manufacturer intended 5 engines, 2 petrol and 3 diesel. 3 of them were delivered to Russia. A very successful and popular 2.7-liter naturally aspirated gasoline 2TR FE with 163 horsepower, now it was not necessary to carry from the Arab countries. He officially entered our market and became a real bestseller. But the 4.0-liter 283 horsepower V8 1GR FE did not gain much popularity due to high tax and driving characteristics due to an overloaded front axle. Interestingly, these versions almost do not differ from each other in terms of fuel consumption. In the city, 17 to 18 liters per 100 kilometers. On the highway, 13 to 14. In any case, if you look at the offers of the secondary market, then for one 4.0 V6 there are about 5 2.7-liter and 2 diesels. We sold Prado with a 173 horsepower 1KD FTV turbo diesel, and in Europe its more powerful 190 horsepower version with a particulate filter. Unfortunately, all motors are exceptionally reliable. Unfortunately for me, because in general there is nothing to write about. Of course, the owners had cases of freezing nozzles and destruction of pistons, there were failures of attached electrics, even overheating and problems with the head gasket. However, these are special cases and do not belong to typical malfunctions. And those that do fit into one paragraph. Engines with a volume of 2.7 liters in cold weather vibrate at idle, which, as it warms up, stops by itself and does not require intervention. The motor is chain, the valves are regulated by washers, and this procedure is needed once every 200,000 kilometers. Injectors, of course, need to be cleaned, but if you refuel at least once out of 3 with gasoline with cleaning additives, then this is extremely rarely required on both gasoline engines. 4.0-liter engines of the first releases suffer from a stuck EGR valve, which was later corrected. The submersible filter of the fuel pump can also become clogged with sediment, but this also happens extremely rarely, and even then when operating far from civilization. Diesel engines lose traction when driving for long periods at high speeds. Moreover, high speeds should be understood as only 110 km/h, and sometimes 100. It is interesting that long-term operation at high crankshaft speeds without load does not lead to a similar effect. The dealer's verdict is unequivocal, flashing the brain, but this does not help much. I must say that after restyling in 2013, the problem of loss of traction has become extremely rare. For runs of 250 to 300,000 kilometers, plastic parts of the turbine blade geometry actuator may begin to wedge. Actually, the supercharger does not need to be changed. You can get off with a repair kit, or even just flushing. If you got to replace the turbine and do not want to repair it, then prepare 40,000 rubles for a new one. Toyota Prado J150, like the J120, was equipped with 3 transmission options. Rarely, but you can find a car with the 5-speed mechanics, which was installed with both diesel and gasoline 2.7-liter engines. With the same gasoline engine, you can find cars with a 4-speed automatic. This box is reliable, provides good starting dynamics, but kicks with further shifts, and its gear ratios are not ideally matched. The most successful can be called a 5-speed automatic, which was installed on all versions officially supplied to Russia, and, oddly enough, mechanics. If you are going to actively exploit the Prado off-road, take a closer look at the manual box. As for maintenance, you just need to change the oil on time, drive as carefully as possible, and the transmission will delight for many, many years. Even the clutch goes without problems for 200,000 kilometers. But the suspension and chassis can cause some trouble. 2 types of suspension were installed on the Prado, spring and pneumatic hydraulic with the ability to adjust the level of the rear of the body. There are versions with springs and shock absorbers of adjustable stiffness, although everyone still drives in the sport mode. The air suspension allows you to raise the rear of the body by 40 mm and lower it by 30. This was done not to increase the ground clearance, as some people think, but to compensate for the load in the trunk and not worsen the exit angle. If the pneumatic chambers are not periodically washed, they fail. Replacement is expensive, 18,000 rubles per cylinder. But a slight roll to the left side cannot be cured. It appears from the fact that on the left are both the fuel tank and the driver, who is often heavier than the tank. However, cars with spring suspension also roll, but are easily leveled by a banal permutation of the springs from right to left. Stabilizer bushings do not last long, especially for active drivers, but on average they nurse for a year. Shock absorbers are generally reliable, but the front wheel bearings are not so hardy. The real scourge of all racers is the rapid wear of the brakes. The pads may not be enough even for 15,000 kilometers, despite the fact that the discs can withstand 10 times longer. Like all modern SUVs, Toyota Prado has permanent all-wheel drive with a locking center differential. Moreover, it can be blocked both automatically and forcibly. The drive is reliable, and the presence of both mechanical and electronic assistance seriously increases the chances of spending the night at home, and not in a forest rut. In short, there are many assistants, but they are all reliable. The only thing that can fail is the view cameras, which show crookedly, and are quickly splashed with dirt, and fail for some unknown reason. So don't get in the habit of riding cameras. In the Russian market, used Prado J150 cars can be found in any configuration, any color, and with any engine. There are more than enough offers, but the price tag is quite high. Optimal in terms of costs will be a gasoline version with a transparent history, a 2.7-liter engine and a 5-speed automatic. In general, buying a Toyota Land Cruiser Prado can be a good investment, especially if you value reliability, are going to live a long life, and are used to focusing not on external beauty, but on internal content.